What's up, CGs? So glad that you're able to tune in today. We are 5 weeks into our series called The New Normal, and this Sunday's sermon was titled The New Dangers. Now, this is taken out of Mark chapter 2, verses 18 through 22, and it's a fairly familiar passage to many of us, and I kind of want to just talk about a couple of things really quick. Now, what we've talked about is the fact that the old ways of doing things aren't really necessary with our new normal in Christ. Now, I want us to kind of think about that because when we read this story, which I encourage you to do as a group in a little bit, when we read this story, we see something really intriguing about how people perceived Jesus. I mean, Jesus and his disciples were eating in a time where a lot of the religious, devout Jews were fasting, and the outsider's perspective of Jesus is that he should and his disciples should have been observing these pious customs of fasting, because that's what all these other devout Jews were doing at the time. But I want us to acknowledge something about that expectation, because their expectation really indicated something about what they thought or who they thought Jesus was. They thought because Jesus was a leader that he should have followed through with these religious customs, much in the way of John the Baptist, much in the way of a lot of these Pharisees and scribes, and so on. But I like that what Jesus does for them is he kind of pulls into them this divine perspective over the question, not just about fasting, but about religious customs in general. And what he's really trying to draw attention to is that these are really more than just a custom. It's more than just a routine. It's more than just a rhythm of holiness even. But what he does for us is he answers this underlying why. Why do we do these things? And that's important for you to think about as a group today. Why do we go through the religious motions that we do? We may have the best of intentions, but if we can't understand the why, then probably we're missing the point. Now, using this familiar wedding and banquet imagery and wineskins and shrunken cloths or unshrunk cloths, Jesus reminds these people that they have a time, or they have a hope for a time of salvation. Now, you're probably like, what is that? Like, wedding, banquets, unshrunken cloths, and wine? What does it have to do with salvation? I mean, really what he's doing is he's reminding them about this hope that they have for a time of salvation. He's reminding them that the reason they do these things is because they are anticipating the Christ who's going to come back, the Messiah who's going to come things and restore the world to the way that it needs to be and restore God's people into relationship with him, right? So fasting, as good as it was, it had a few different trails that it could follow in terms of how or a time for it, but really what it was at its core was it was a public gesture of mourning. And it was a petitioning for God to provide for them in a time where they were in need. And what Jesus is saying is, as he's standing in front of them, he's saying, with the Messiah standing right here, there's no need for you to do that. Let's pay attention to what's happening. We trust that God is actively at work, restoring the world, and we can't get so bogged down by doing the religious things that we miss out on the presence of God, who is committed to be among us in this time. What Jesus is encouraging us to remember is that the old ways of doing things, the old ways are no longer necessary in our new normal with Christ. And so Jesus anchors this point home with these analogies. Patching an old shirt with a new unshrunk cloth or putting new wine in old wineskins will actually ruin the entire thing. So what he's telling us is that this new is vital in our new normal with Christ. And so, CGs, as you have these conversations today, I would encourage you to remember that the old religious traditions were good. They served a purpose, but they make a terrible substitute for a relationship with God. And so as you have these conversations, as you pray together, I pray that you would recognize that your life is enriched and it's livable when you relate with God through obedience. So let's put our perspective in the right place and let's look to Christ to set the tone for our new normal today. CGs, be blessed.